We begin our story with two separate tales of woe. Both take place in the same city on the same day. May 26th, 1955. We are in the Bronx, at Yankee Stadium. It's an overcast but otherwise nice warm spring day, and the Yankees are hosting a doubleheader against the hapless Washington Senators, who are already out of contention only a month into the campaign. Meanwhile, the ongoing streak of winning seasons for the Yankees is so old that it could run for Congress. Baseball may revel in randomness and chaos more than compared to other sports, but suspense and uncertainty did not buy tickets to the ballpark today. Washington starts Game 1 with a 1-2-3 inning, and the Yankees respond with a Mickey Mantle solo home run. The Senators do strike back in the second inning with a home run of their own to tie the game, but nobody's fooled. In fact, this will be the last competitive run that the Senators will score for the rest of the day. Game 1 finishes Yankees 8, Senators 4. How about Game 2? Well, Yankees 7, Senators 3. Everything in the universe is as society understands and expects it to be. While this is happening, our second drama begins across town, in Midtown Manhattan. Joe Boyd, a long-suffering Senators fan, is in front of the TV watching the Senators play, and frankly, he just cannot take it anymore. His home life is miserable. Nothing brings him joy. Everything good in the world is eclipsed because his favorite baseball team just cannot win, especially when it comes to the constant drubbing delivered by New York. To nobody in particular, he exclaims he would give anything for the Senators to come out on top this season. And when a mysterious stranger suddenly appears, offering him the chance to join the Senators as the world's greatest baseball player and win the pennant, Joe barely hesitates. The stranger? Definitely the devil. The cost? Joe is absolutely going to hell. But anyone who knows anything about baseball in the 1950s understands that hell is far better than being a Senators fan. And they understand it so well that Joe and the Devil repeat this performance 8 shows a week, dark Mondays, at the 46th Street Theater, in the Broadway musical Damn Yankees. Now, while Joe's story is a work of, and I cannot stress this enough, fiction, the source material was definitely not. When the musical opened only a month earlier, the Yankees had won the AL pennant 20 times, while the Senators had only won 3. And the last of those was in 1933, a full 21 years before the musical debuted. For the audience attending this musical, the anguish felt by the Senators fans was common knowledge. Failure was the role that the Senators played in baseball. The only satisfaction that could be afforded to them would have to be in the form of an elaborate magical tale, where only by divine intervention could the results ever be any different. Today, the Washington Senators no longer exist. The team's owner died the same year that Damn Yankees debuted, and his nephew relocated the team a few years later. Major League Baseball, trying to stave off competition from the newly developing Continental League, created a new Washington Senators franchise in order to keep baseball in DC, but it only lasted a decade. To casual observers, this is where the story of the Washington Senators ends. An underdog team that never got its moment of triumph, stuck in the worst type of rivalry, where their every waking moment was filled with animosity, while their nemesis didn't even bother with them at all, and got a musical written about them as a consolation prize. But in reality, this story is still ongoing today. The Senators that relocated may have a different name, and briefly found success, but fate wasn't fooled by the new uniforms for long, and now history is repeating itself in one of the most agonizing losing streaks in sporting history. This is a story about the inexplicable misfortune of the Minnesota Twins. You could argue that, for a short time, the baseball gods got distracted. Defying their place in the universe, the Twins won 2 World Series championships in 1987 and 1991, both series going a full 7 games. Neither of these Twins squads were traditional powerhouses. In 1987, they came out of an incredibly weak AL West with only 85 wins, a record which would have put them 5th in the AL East. The 1991 squad was coming out of a season in which they had finished dead last. But for that brief moment in time, they felt indestructible. The 1991 World Series against Atlanta, who had also finished last the previous year, is still considered by many to be the greatest World Series of all time. Every game was won by the home team. 5 games were decided by a single run, 4 were decided in the final at bat, and 3 went into extra innings. It also featured Dan Gladden's mullet, just so everyone could instantly know what era this game was played in. That was nice of him. It was a glorious time to be a Twins fan, especially for a kid like me who was just growing into their baseball fandom. But that stretch of success would prove to be brief. In 1991, Minnesota and Atlanta locked arms and marched from last to first, simultaneously achieving a feat that had never been done before, even by a single team. But from there, their paths diverged wildly. Atlanta would go on to make the playoffs in 12 of the next 13 years, every single time as division champion. The Twins, however, would not see the postseason again for another decade. And so we need to fast forward to 2004, and the Twins, having won their division for the 3rd consecutive season, are starting to look like a consistent contender. Is this the start of a new era in Minnesota sports?
Into right center field, going to get it, Jones. The Twins win game 1. And Tim, tonight they did it.
What you just witnessed on October 5th, 2004, is the last postseason game the Twins have ever won. Since that day, despite 5 more division championships, a wildcard berth, and plenty to celebrate on the surface, Minnesota hasn't just failed to advance in the postseason. They haven't been able to win a single game. Following their victory in Game 1 of the 2004 ALDS, the Twins are 0-18. It is the longest postseason losing streak in American sporting history. 18 losses over 18 years of futility. How did we get here? Why did we get here? The 18 losses are collected across 7 appearances in the postseason. After their Game 1 win in 2004, they immediately lost the next 3 to be eliminated from the ALDS. Then they were swept in 2006, 2009, again in 2010, lost a wildcard game in 2017, got back to the ALDS to be swept in 2019, and then went 0-2 in the expanded playoff format during the COVID-shortened 2020 season. Typically, when you're examining a losing streak in baseball, it's easy to find a common thread. A player is hurt, the team is in a rebuild, a manager has lost the clubhouse, they're phoning it in because they're out of contention. Again, this isn't just 18 games over 3 weeks in the middle of a rebuilding season. The only constant throughout this streak is the name of the team on the jerseys. So if we can't examine this calamity through the lens of a root cause, then let's think about its magnitude. How do you measure the significance of losing 18 games in a row? Obviously, at its most basic, every game of baseball is a 50-50 proposition. Baseball games don't end in ties, usually. And so the 2 outcomes are that you either win or lose. Well, assuming each game's odds were equivalent to a coin flip, an 18-game losing streak is equivalent to 262,144 to 1. To put it in perspective, that is approximate to the odds of something happening in only 1 game across every single regular season contest in the history of Major League Baseball. But let's be honest with ourselves, baseball games are not coin flips. In many of these games, the Twins were underdogs, and as such, the odds weren't quite that bad, were they? Well, if you are someone that looks to sports betting and the wisdom of markets as being a leading indicator, well, this tweet shared by Andrew Woodruff shows that Vegas considered the Twins as the underdogs in 13 out of the 18 games in the losing streak. Now, using those odds, according to Andrew, you come to what you might consider a more palatable result of 28,524 to 1. Now that still feels pretty dire, but I imagine that the typical Twins fan would want to stop at this point and not delve into the problem further, for fear of dredging up pain that they've managed to bury by this point. However, I can't stop here. I feel like this number doesn't capture just how heartbreaking this streak has been, and therefore, it can't help me process it, or feel like any other baseball fans can begin to appreciate the scope of what we're talking about here. So, Sherman set the Wayback Machine for October 6th, 2004. It's time to process some trauma. Game 2 of the 2004 ALDS. Oh wait, who are we playing again? The New York f***ing Yankees, who, it should be noted, the Twins had also faced, and lost to, the previous postseason. Remember how I talked about the history between the Yankees and the Washington Senators at the start? So how has that played out in the following decades? Well, funny you should ask, I brought math. This is a bell curve. A bell curve is a visual representation of the normal distribution of a statistical outcome. If you were to track what side a coin landed on every time you flipped it, the distribution between heads and tails tends to gravitate towards 50% the more you flip it, and the less likely you'll have a lopsided result. Now, as I pointed out before, baseball games aren't coin flips, but over time, a franchise's strength varies, and you should expect to see some normalization, right? Well, we can take every franchise currently in baseball and chart how they have done against each other over their entire history. Some matchups are rare because of expansion teams or due to interleague play being a more recent addition to the schedule. Others involve franchises that have shared a league for over a century. Regardless, probability suggests that the more times two teams play against each other, the more likely that their records will normalize to an even split of wins. The Yankees and Twins do not. In fact, they share the second most improbable head-to-head record, with 1,971 games played, 1,177 of those being won by the Yankees, or 59.7%. If you flipped a coin 1,971 times, the odds that you would land on heads at least 1,177 times is so infinitesimal that Google Sheets won't even render a decimal point that low. Anyways, Game 2. Brad Radke's on the mound for the Twins, after having, by Fangraphs WAR, the best regular season of his career. He matches up favorably against John Lieber for the Yankees, but both teams get on the scoreboard immediately. The Twins score in the top of the first. Derek Jeter immediately responds with a leadoff home run. The Twins add 2 in the second. The Yankees respond with 2 in the third. Then Alex Rodriguez puts it into another gear, hitting a solo shot in the 5th and an RBI in the 7th. The latter of which would knock Radke out of the game and leave the Yankees up 5-3. That brings us to the top of the 8th inning, and my chance to introduce to you the direct reason why the ground rule double is the rule I hate the absolute most. Tom Flash Gordon is pitching for the Yankees, and for younger Twins fans, that is the father of Twins infielder Nick Gordon. And after a Shannon Stewart flyout, Jacques Jones makes an awful swing to strike out, but the pitch ends up in the dirt and gets by Jorge Posada, and Jones makes it safely to first. Torrey Hunter follows with a single, and with the go-ahead run coming to the plate, the Yankees bring in Mariano Rivera for a 5-out save. We hadn't fully realized it yet, but Rivera's first opponent was someone that would go down as one of the greatest Twins to ever play the game. Justin Morneau is only in his second year. neither of which have been full seasons, but his play has been exceptional enough that the Twins deal their starting first baseman to the Red Sox at the trade deadline for a pitching prospect, despite leading the AL Central, primarily to clear the way for Mohr to get more playing time. Mohr responds with 19 home runs in only 74 games, a slugging percentage over 500, and a huge exhale from the Twins front office that they did not just screw this up. He also does this to Mariano Rivera's very first pitch.
2 men on, 1 man out, Mohr, a bloop, dropping, it's in front of Sheffield, a base hit, it rolls away. Coming in to score is Jock Jones, going to third, Torrey Hunter. It is now 5-4. Mohr.
Now only down 1 with runners at the corners, Kowalski comes to the plate knowing that any extra bases hit will put the Twins in front. This matchup is a battle, and even though he quickly goes down 0-2, Koski's at-bat continues for what feels like ages. It's actually pretty wild to watch this after having spent a season watching baseball with a pitch clock. This at-bat will only go 8 pitches. It still takes a full 5 minutes to complete. Koski gets all the way back to a full count, and manager Ron Gardenhire puts all his chips in the middle, pinch running for Mohr with Luis Rivas. Everyone in the stadium knows Rivas is going to be running on the next pitch. And he does.
There he goes. That's along the left field line. That one twisting into the corner. That ball is a fair ball. It bounces over the seats, up into the seats for an automatic double that might have cost the Twins a run.
An extra bases hit with the runner on first already on the move. But because it went over the fence, it is a ground rule double and everyone can only advance 2 bases. Doesn't matter if the runner managed to claim another base before the ball went over the wall. He's stuck at third. Everything about this sucks. And to reinforce this, Kubel strikes out, Christian Guzman makes a broken bat ground out, the game is tied, and the Twins have sacrificed their best hitter for a run that didn't get to come around to score. The game went to extra innings and stayed deadlocked until the 12th, when Torrey Hunter did hit a 2-out solo shot to take a 6-5 lead into the bottom half of the 12th, with Hall of Fame vote receiver Joe Nathan on the mound. So, what's the problem here? Well, the problem is, this is Joe Nathan's 3rd inning of work. He's now already thrown 37 pitches, and Ron Gardenhire has nobody warming in the bullpen. And so after striking out John Olerud, Nathan throws a first pitch strike to Miguel Cairo before walking him on the next 4 pitches. Then he walks Jeter on 4 pitches. And then the world's worst person makes an excellent hit.
Under pressure. Left center. Hit well. Way back there. This ball is over the wall on a bounce.
Intentional walk issued to Gary Sheffield. Gardenhire brings in JC Romero 4 batters too late, and then immediately gets walked off by Hideki Matsui on the very next pitch. Yankees win. The Yankees, Everything about this game hurt. Hopes were created, and then those hopes were destroyed. How much hope, I hear you ask? Well, I have terrible news. I think I can quantify it. It is time for me to introduce the concept of Sklansky dollars. At one time in my life, I was a fairly serious poker player. Poker, like baseball, is a game of averages, odds, and expected outcomes. When you play a lot of poker, you end up having a lot of situations where you make what is mathematically the correct decision, but still end up losing. Or conversely, you get your chips in the pot as an underdog, but still get lucky. Well, in situations like this, it can be really tempting to judge the quality of your play solely on how much money you had at the end of the night, instead of looking at the odds that were in play when you made crucial decisions at the table. To help with this, a mathematical process was introduced by poker player and author David Sklansky, a man who is credited with many of the founding principles behind understanding poker from an analytical perspective. To demonstrate Sklansky dollars, let's take a look at an example. You're playing No Limit Texas Hold'em against one other player. Your heads up, you both have $100 in front of you, and you have pocket aces, the best possible starting hand. Before any more cards come out, your opponent pushes their entire $100 stack in the middle, and you call with your aces. Your opponent shows Ace King of Spades, which is a great hand, but you are still extremely favored. Unfortunately for you, when the flop is dealt, it's all spades. Giving your opponent a flush, you don't get any help on the turn or the river, and you lose your $100. Now, Sklansky dollars uses the amount of money that's at stake, the amount of money that you put into call, and your odds of winning at that moment to produce a number that can either be positive or negative. Now, in the example above, it's plus $74. A positive number tells you that if you made this decision enough times, in the long run, you will come out ahead, and even though you lost, you made the right decision. But the hand situation is really important. Let's say that the hand went exactly the same way, except the money didn't go in until after the flop, and your opponent already had a flush. Well, in that case, calling all in for $100 would mean doing so while your equity is only around 2%, meaning this decision would result in negative 96 Sklansky dollars. So what does this have to do with baseball? Well, Vegas odds had the Twins as the underdog for 13 of the 18 games, but obviously these odds were set before the games started. What if baseball was like poker and we could find the moment where the Twins had the highest equity possible, the most Sklansky dollars, to place our bet on them to win? Well, we can, thanks to Fangraphs.com, which provides a running win expectancy for every game in its database. Win expectancy is a purely situational statistic which compares the current runs, outs, and runners on base to the historical odds of a team winning in a similar scenario. It doesn't care who the opponent is, who's pitching, who's on deck, who's left in the bullpen, or whether the umpire will correctly decide that Ron Gant's momentum carried him off the bag with no assistance needed by Kent Hrbek. Win expectancy is a dispassionate observer. If you're down 2, going up to bat in the bottom of the 7th, your win expectancy is 22.8%. If you lead off the inning with a double, it goes up to 32.7%. So, here is our proposal. Damn Yankees is back on Broadway in 2004, and thrilled by the victory in Game 1 of the 2004 ALDS, our friend Joe Boyd wants to place a big wager on Game 2. Sensing yet another opportunity, the Devil reappears and offers an even bigger wager. Not only will he allow Joe to bet on Game 2, but he'll declare Joe a winner if the Twins win any of the next 18 postseason games they appear in. And he'll even promise Joe a look into the future with a situation in each game showing the Twins with at least a 50% chance to win. Assuming the Devil shows Joe the amount where the Twins reached their maximum win expectancy, what are the odds that Joe would lose that bet? Let's find out. For our first game, the Twins' highest win expectancy came when John Olerud struck out to begin the bottom of the 12th. Up by 1, bases empty, and only 2 outs remaining, the Twins were 88.1% favorites to win, meaning this streak starts right off with a doozy. It should be noted that at this very moment, Baseball Reference has the Twins as 86% favorites to win the division series outright. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that this is the highest that this number will ever be. Back in Minnesota for Game 3, the Twins strike first on a Jock Jones homer in the bottom of the first. Yankees respond in the second with 2 quick outs, pushing our win expectancy to 64.1%. Immediately after that, though, Jorge Posada hits the first of 5 consecutive singles, scoring 3, which would eventually become 8 unanswered runs. The Twins would try to rally in the 9th, but too little, too late. Twins lose 8-4. Facing elimination at home, the Twins would need to turn up the heat in Game 4. And it certainly helped that their ace was back on the mound. Look, If this video was going to be my own version of a Dorktown history of the Minnesota Twins, it would be so much longer than a Ken Burns documentary because of how close I am to the source material. That being said, we gotta stop for a minute and talk about Johan Santana. In so many ways, this almost didn't happen. When he was spotted by a scout for the Houston Astros, they didn't know whether to have him on the mound or in center field. And once the Astros decided on pitching, Santana was unhappy with the decision and had to be talked into not walking away. Then, in 1999, the Astros left him unprotected in the Rule 5 draft, and the Twins took advantage. There wasn't much in the way of expectations. His debut in the major leagues was completely ignored by the local press in favor of fellow rookie Matthew LaCroix. But after a stretch of mediocrity and being sent to the minors to work on his changeup for a bit, he began to take off and become arguably the best pitcher in baseball. 2004 would be the first time he led the AL in Fangraphs war, but certainly not the last. And at the end of this year, he will unanimously win his first Cy Young Award. Coming into the playoffs, Santana's second half has been borderline invincible, with a 1.21 ERA. This is who the Twins are counting on to turn the tide in this series. There is every reason to believe that he will. And for 5 innings, he does. Just about the entire lineup showed up at the plate to give Santana the run support he deserves, and the Twins would hold a 5-1 lead as late as the 8th inning. 6 outs left, with a 4-run lead, and setup man Juan Rincon on the mound to keep things clean for Joe Nathan to close things out. If you didn't know what this video was about, you'd feel pretty frickin' confident about this, wouldn't you? But yeah, things begin to unravel, and they did so at full speed. In what felt like the blink of an eye, the lead is gone. Rincon gives up another double to John Olerud, and suddenly, Ron Gardenhire can't get out to the mound fast enough. Joe Nathan comes in and does preserve the tie, but the damage is done, both to the score and to the emotions of just about everyone in the Metrodome. Like Game 2, this game will go to extra innings, but the Twins will muster only a single base runner for the rest of the game, and A-Rod will hit a double, steal third, and then immediately score the winning run on a wild pitch before Mariano Rivera shuts the door on the series. The Twins go from being 96.7% favorites in the bottom of the 7th to eliminated. It takes the Twins a full year to shake off the emotional damage of that series. But in 2006, we learn why postseason success matters so much to how we remember the baseball of the past. Every year, 30 teams take the field for the most prolific regular season in professional sports. Over 162 games, we learn as much as we care to about these teams, these players, their abilities, and the narratives that shape our fandom. Who stepped up to lead? Who struggled? Who found redemption? Who discovered their own greatness? The 2006 Twins are one of the great aberrations of baseball history. They started the season 25-33, looking like an otherwise lost season. Then they won over 2/3 of their remaining schedule. They came back from 12.5 games, winning it by a half game over the Detroit Tigers on the last day of the regular season. The 2006 Twins roster included the AL MVP in Justin Morneau, the second unanimous AL Cy Young for Johan Santana, and the winner of the AL batting title in Joe Mauer, the first catcher to win it since Johnny Bench. Only one other time in history has one team had all 3 achievements won by 3 separate players, and there were a lot fewer than 30 teams in the league at the time. This team was special. It had Torrey Hunter, Francisco Liriano, Joe Nathan. This team should be marveled at, not just by Twins fans, but by all of baseball fandom. It should be discussed the same way that we talk about other great teams in history. But because their postseason amounts to their usual practice of getting swept, it joins the ranks of the forgotten. I'm not going to be doing any breathless breakdowns of their 3-game set against the Oakland Athletics. Remember Moneyball? The team celebrating as the A's walk off the field in 2002? Yeah, that was the Twins. But also, do you know what team ended their 20-game winning streak? Also, the Twins. Maybe this was a bit of balancing the ledger, one underdog team to another. This is the one series in this stretch where the Twins can't point to any single moment where they were massive favorites. In fact, there's a point in the bottom of the 9th of Game 1 where Torrey Hunter cuts the Twins' deficit to 1, but because they also recorded an out, their win expectancy still went down. If that's not Minnesota Twins baseball, then I don't know what is. If we're going to discuss 2009, then we need to start with 2008, in which the White Sox were threatening to run away with the AL Central after sweeping the Twins in June. However, the Twins responded by winning 18 of their next 21 games and taking the division lead by 1 game, sweeping the White Sox back in the last week of the season, only to finish in a dead heat, setting up Game 163. Despite beating the White Sox 10-8 in the season series, Chicago got to host the game because the rules for a tiebreaker at the time decided the venue by a coin flip, which happened way back in September. What would play out was a tense pitching duel between Nick Blackburn and John Danks. Jim Thome's solo shot in the 7th inning would be the only run in the game, and the Twins would see their season end in a 1-0 heartbreaker. The following year, the Twins would reflect on how wild and suspenseful 2008 had been, and say to the fan base, "Oh, you thought that was drama? No, this is drama." The 2009 Twins would find themselves 8 games back of the Detroit Tigers as late as September 6th. The season was all but being written off in the press, especially after losing 3 in a row days later, and falling below 500, now dropping to 3rd place behind the White Sox with Justin Morneau injured and unable to play. The only thing keeping things interesting was the fact that Detroit had entered a skid of its own, dropping 5 in a row at the same time. It would take a tremendous push from Minnesota to make things interesting, which is exactly what happened. 3 games back, with 4 to play, the Twins would win out and force their 2nd consecutive tiebreaker game, the only franchise in MLB history to ever do so. Learning their lesson from the previous year, picking the home team was not left a chance, with Major League Baseball allowing the team's head-to-head records to determine the venue. This was fortuitous for 3 reasons. First, the Twins once again held the better record, meaning the game would be played in the Metrodome. Second, because the season ended on a Sunday, the tiebreaker would normally be played the next day, but it had to be pushed back until Tuesday because the Vikings, and their brand new quarterback, had been scheduled to host Monday Night Football. This bought a crucial extra day off for Twins starting pitcher Scott Baker, who otherwise would have had to pitch on 3 days rest. Finally, 2009 was to be the last season the Twins played at the Metrodome, as Target Field would finish construction in December. It was far from the best setting for baseball, a football stadium making a half-hearted attempt at being a multi-use facility, but a lot of those same issues, the roof, the noise, the turf, the air circulation system, the baggy outfield wall, all of this made it one of the best home field advantages in the sport. And it would get to play that role for at least one more evening in one of the greatest regular season games ever played.
Lost a 3-game lead with 4 games to play, and here you are, still have a chance, 1 game to erase all of that misery.
Line drive into center field, that's in for a hit. Here comes Granderson, he's going to score, and the Tigers have an early lead. Towering fly ball, center field, well hit. Span going back at the wall. It's long gone.
Your big players usually come up big. There's Jason on deck.
Ball gets thrown away. Runner from third's going to score. Topher comes home, and a bad break for Minnesota. That ball hit Jerry White, the first base coach. In the first, and left 2 on in the third. And he drives one deep to right field. Kubal belts it right on out of here.
Pitch out.
High fly ball, hammered deep left field. Track, wall, and goal!
It's out with a curveball on the first pitch.
High fly ball, that's belted deep toward left. Track, wall, and we are tied! Ordonez launches one to left, and the Tigers are still alive. 4-4 your score. Line drive, one there, throw back to first. Double play! Little fly ball into shallow left. It's going to drop, and it gets by Rayburn. Rennaisance can't get it. It's up against the wall. Kadire on his way to third. Throw late. Ball up the middle, base hit, we're tied. Runner around second, on his way to third. 5-5. Since 2002. Line drive, base hit, caught out there. Runner tags, here he comes, throw to the plate, on target, and in time. A double play ends the 10th. Rayburn evens the ledger. Ground ball, second base. They got to come home, and they get the force. What a play by Nick Punto. Edge was flying down the first baseline. No chance for 2. And he heads up, shading behind him. Patting the glove, doing everything he can to try to shorten that lead, even by a step. We've already seen tonight how important a half step can be.
Don't forget also Clee Thomas in right field who came in defensively. He's got an outstanding arm also.
He's very deep in right. And the pitch bounce right side, base hit. Here comes Gomez around third. There'll be no play. The Twins have won the Central.
Bliss. Absolute, unbridled bliss. In front of a home crowd, the Twins became the first team ever to be 3 games down with 4 to play and end the season as division champions. MLB Network will name this as one of the top 20 baseball games of all time. Sports Illustrated declares it to be the game of the decade. Those accolades are wholly deserved, as evidenced by the fact that when this game ends, not a single soul among the 54,000 in attendance moves for the exits. This is a crowd made up of locals who snagged tickets that went on sale less than 48 hours ago. This isn't the World Series, where the national focus, the spectacle, the formality and structure, the exorbitantly high ticket prices all make for a slightly diluted atmosphere at times. This, however, this is premium, organic, uncut jubilation. A celebration of the moment, of this place, and this team. This beautiful, exultant team now doing victory laps like kids around the dome, refusing to leave until they have high-fived every single person in the building. Even Mr. Skim Milk himself, Joe Mauer, who also just clinched his second batting title and earned an MVP, comes off positively giddy. This deserves to be the final curtain call for the 2009 Twins. But instead, there's now a postseason to play. And in the moment, that's more cause for celebrating. They'll go into the playoffs surely feeling unstoppable after what they have accomplished, but also gassed, having just left it all on the field in a 12-inning prize fight. That extra day of rest that they bought because the Vikings were playing Monday Night Football, it's now going to work against the Twins, as they now have to immediately follow the victory party with boarding a red-eye flight to play a game the following day. That flight is headed to New York. Of course, it's the Yankees. It was always going to be the Yankees. Even though the Yankees are the top seed and would normally face the wild-card Boston Red Sox, MLB rules from this era dictated that two teams in the same division can't face off in the first round. The Twins have lost all 7 regular season games against the Yankees this year. They're about to lose 3 more. The game starts at 6 p.m. Eastern. The players didn't get to their hotel until after 3 a.m. the night before, after having played through 12 innings of the most intense baseball they have ever experienced. And when Game 1 starts, it will be facing CC Sabathia, newly minted as the highest paid pitcher in baseball, with a performance to match. With all of those facts laid out, expectations are muted. If this team has anything left in the tank, it will be a pleasant surprise. Surprise! 2 outs, down to their last strike, bingo, bango, bongo. And a Jorge Posada whoopsie-doodle for good measure when he takes his eye off Joe Mauer just long enough for Mauer to score on the passed ball. The Twins are now 68.6% favorites to win. But following this moment, the fatigue starts to show. Jeter immediately ties the game with a 2-run shot, and the remainder of the game is like slowly letting the air out of a balloon. The Yankees methodically add to their lead for the rest of the game, while the Twins do little in response. Yankees win 7-2. Which brings us to Game 2. I am going to do my absolute best to not begin screaming while describing the events of this game, because it contains every ingredient necessary to result in destroying your TV set. Unforced errors, missed opportunities, incredibly bad luck, and awful, awful officiating. Even though their win expectancy isn't the highest that the Twins will reach during this 18-game streak, if there is a game amongst them that I feel like the Twins should have finished with a victory, it is this one. Deep breaths, everyone. The antics begin in the top of the 4th, with the game still scoreless. Twins pitcher Nick Blackburn has kept the Yankees hitless, and with A.J. Burnett facing the heart of the Twins order for the second time, he records 2 easy outs before seemingly beginning to unravel. He hits Delman Young for a free base, and then hits Carlos Gomez in the hands in the next at-bat. Matt Tolbert comes to the plate with a chance to plate a run, and he delivers on the very first pitch with a single to right field. Delman Young rounds third and heads home for what should otherwise be an easy run. So it's time for...
IBM presents You Make the Call.
You're Carlos Gomez, and you've reached second base while your teammate is attempting to score. Do you? A. Stay at second base, since Nick Swisher hasn't thrown the ball to the catcher, thus giving you the opportunity to advance to third. B. Attempt to take third anyways, relying on your speed and agility should Swisher attempt an out by throwing to third. C. Attempt to take third, immediately eat shit after rounding the bag, and then run to third anyways to start a rundown, thus allowing Young to still have time to score before the out is recorded. Or D. Attempt to take third, immediately eat shit after rounding the bag, and then inexplicably run back to second right at the Yankee holding the baseball to end the inning with 0 runs scored. you guessed D, then congrats, you're Carlos Gomez.
The Twins fail to score, and the game continues in a 0-0 tie. Thankfully, the Twins manage to plate a run in the top of the 6th, only for A-Rod to tie the game in the 6th. Can this guy hurry up and just get suspended already? Finally, in the top of the 8th, things start to give way. With future twin Phil Hughes on the mound for the Yankees, the present Twins sequence some quintessential piranha ball with a walk and 3 singles. The last coming after Mariano Rivera was sent in to try and clean up the mess. Nope, don't think so. Twins blank the Yankees in the 8th and are up 2, only needing 3 more outs. 91.7% favorites. Let's go! Let's do this! We've got them right where we... Alex Rodriguez hits a 2-run homer off Joe Nathan to tie the game in the bottom of the 9th, and in other breaking news, there is no God. For those of you whose knowledge of baseball doesn't extend much beyond this video, I assure you, Joe Nathan was a really good pitcher. You're gonna have to take my word for it. The 10th inning is incredibly tense. The Twins get runners at the corners before failing to score. And then the Yankees get runners at the corners before failing to score. And we come to the top of the 11th inning and the entrance to this particular story of my personal baseball hero. Joseph Patrick Mohr was better at baseball than you, and statistically speaking, he probably still is too. Local high school hero in multiple sports, Joe was taken as the #1 pick by the Twins in 2001, made his debut in 2004, and went on to become one of the greatest catchers the game has ever known, winning 3 batting titles at catcher, while dazzling crowds with his defense, baseball IQ, and aw shucks gee whiz, I'm just a good kid who loves his mom wholesomeness while not burdening us with any off-the-field scandals, except for suffering from concussions and bilateral leg weakness, while simultaneously being paid a lot of money that was still less than what he was actually worth. Regardless, I am assured by some Twins fans on social media that this is a moral and personal failing on his part. Okay, fine. I am going to indulge in one very tangential aside. Years later, due to the injuries, Mohr was forced to move to first base. He still struggled for a bit, but in 2017, everything was coming together. Even though he was outside of his peak, he returned to being a 300 hitter with a 117 WRC+, while he was a defensive monster at first base. He ranked first in the AL in DRS, first in the AL at UZR, and committed only a single fielding error over 1,000 innings. Mohr is a lock to solidify his Hall of Fame credentials by becoming only the 3rd player to win Gold Gloves at multiple positions, right? Nope. Instead, the honor goes to Eric Hosmer? Eric Hosmer, who ranks 9th in DRS and dead last among qualified first basemen at defensive runs above average. Hosmer wins a defensive-focused award for his bat, which is like winning the Academy Award for Best Director because you can solve a Rubik's Cube faster. So, at the time, as you might imagine, I was a little bitter about this. I was also someone who frequently got called on by the mods of the Minnesota Twins subreddit to make topical images for the sidebar. So when Brian Dozier and Byron Buxton won Gold Gloves at their respective positions, I was asked if I could make something nice. This is what I submitted. This got rejected, and I was asked to try something that wasn't as salty. Okay, yes, we get it. Can we have something, I don't know, celebratory? Fine. Mohr wasn't even a finalist for the award. I am still screaming about this 6 years later. Okay, all right, back to 2009. Focus. Joe Mohr wouldn't lose his cool. Be like Joe Mohr. Got it. Okay. Joe Maurer's being cool right now, leading off the top of the 11th, and he does what he does best. He spits on the first pitch. Well, not literally spit. Mohr would never do anything so rude. He made commercials with his mom to advertise milk. I swear to God, Joe, if you have bodies buried in your backyard, I'm going to need so much therapy. And then after taking a strike, Mohr gets a piece of the next pitch
Fly ball down the left field line. That ball slicing, and it is a foul ball.
Foul ball, right?
Bit. This Joe Mohr with that slice on the baseball. That was a fair ball, by the way.
Wow.
Nope. You will notice that umpire Phil Cuzzy is like maybe 15 feet away to make this call. That's because in the postseason, umpiring crews are expanded from the standard set of 4 up to 6th, placing 1 on each foul line for situations exactly like this, and he butchers it. How? Why? You had literally 1 job. Mohr stays cool because Joe is cool for being like Joe Mohr, but why is his manager Ron Gardenhire, famous for being 7th on the all-time managerial ejections list, not losing his shit? That's because in the old Yankee Stadium, if you're in the dugout, the outfield wall blocks your view. It's only after the at-bat that an incredulous Orlando Cabrera comes steaming out of the clubhouse to let everyone know what happened. It wasn't a reviewable call, but holy crap, I would have paid so much cash to see Gardy get in Cuzzy's face and unload on him. Ugh. Cuzzy would admit, after the fact, that he blew the call and that he felt horrible. I appreciate that. But still. Okay, so of course, Joe Mohr, being Joe Mohr, still hits a single up the middle and gets on base. But that is 1 less base than he deserved. Will this cost the Twins? Of course it will. Have you not been paying any attention? Jason Kubel singles to right. Mohr, who should now be on 3rd base, is instead at 2nd. I suppose an argument could be made that maybe Mohr would try and score from 2nd on a single to right field, but Mohr would say later that he was pretty banged up and not moving that quickly. So we will ignore that possibility right now. Michael Kadire then hits the 3rd consecutive single, and the bases are loaded, and now Mohr absolutely should have scored a run. But hey, bases loaded, nobody out, extra innings. This is huge. Delman Young lines out on the first pitch. Carlos Gomez hits a dribbler on his first pitch, and Mohr is thrown out at home. Brendan Harris flies out to center. The Twins don't score. Mark Teixeira hits a home run, and the game is immediately over. The Twins lose a game that they were at one point 91.7% favorites to win. For me, and many other Twins fans, this was the moment things went from, man, we just can't catch a break, to, oh no, we are cursed, aren't we? Well, that view would be reinforced in Game 3, not because it was much of a thriller, but because it started to feel like Groundhog Day. The game would stay scoreless until late. The Twins would play to run through a single, a stolen base, a walk, and a single by Mohr, and then Alex Rodriguez would once again immediately tie the game in the next half inning. I know there's a writer's strike going right now, but this is getting repetitive. Posada would homer in the same inning to take the lead, and the Yankees would never look back. Twins lose 4-1 after reaching a win expectancy of 73.6%. 2009 might be the year that fans think back on the most fondly from this era and remember it as the year that got away, and the Game 163 tiebreaker has a lot to do with that. But if you ask people from the org who were around at that time, they will tell you that 2010 was the season to reminisce about and wonder what might have been. After 2 consecutive years of nail-biting division races, the Twins left absolutely nothing to chance. Playing in their brand new stadium of Target Field, the Twins rode a monster second half to take the division lead for the first time in mid-August and clinch the division championship on September 21st. The Twins would go into the postseason rested, ready, and confident as the 2 seed, ready to have home field advantage as the favored team against the 3rd seed, the Texas Rangers. Wait, I am being told that like last year, the top-seeded Tampa Bay Rays can't play the wild card team because they're in the same division, meaning the Twins, they now get to play the 4 seed instead. Well, that's good news, right? We'll be even more favored now. Well, who is it? Yep. The Yankees are the wild card, but they have the 2nd best record in the American League. Let's get to Game 1. God, we are barely past halfway in the stream. It's a matchup of aces in Target Field's postseason debut, as Francisco Liriano faces CC Sabathia, with 103 Cy Young voting points between the two of them this season. Yes, CC had slightly more, but it is the principle of the thing. So stop me if you've heard this before. The Twins would get on the board first with a Michael Kadire 2-run homer and then add on 2 innings later with a pitch getting past Jorge Posada, scoring the runner on 3rd. A 3-run lead in the 6th, where Liriano, still going strong, strikes out Nick Swisher to start things off. The Twins are 88.9% favorites to win. At this point, dropping that stat is a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? The rest of the inning would continue thusly. Double, wild pitch, walk, RBI single, a strikeout to keep things spicy, RBI single, RBI triple, and then another 2 walks, Gardenhire walking to the mound and Liriano walking to the clubhouse. And Jose Mijares gets Gardner to ground out to put an end to the inning. Yankees lead 4-3. To the Twins' credit, they do not roll over, and this time they're the ones who immediately respond, even after starting the 6th with 2 quick outs. CC Sabathia, who has yet to walk a batter, gives Jim Thome a free pass before Kadire hits an absolute rope to left. Brett Gardner times his dive perfectly to make the catch, but it rattles out. By all rights, the inning should be over. But now the Twins are in business with runners on 2nd and 3rd and Jason Kubel at the plate, who takes another walk to load the bases for Danny Valencia, and Sabathia absolutely cannot find the strike zone. With every single pitch, Target Field is absolutely going wild. Tie game. Yankees manager Joe Girardi leaves Sabathia in to face J.J. Hardy and finally gets the strikeout he needed to get out of the jam. We are back to even for exactly 10 minutes.
That ball high in the air to right along the line, and that ball is out of here. Mark
Teixeira's 2-run homer down the right field line silences the home crowd as they collectively feel the creeping dread that the 10th verse is the same as the first. But the Twins still do keep things interesting. In the 8th inning, Kubel gets on base with a walk while facing Kerry Wood. Holy immaculate grid, Batman. Kerry Wood was on the Yankees? Before, Danny Valencia makes a base hit out of a slow dribbler to short with the kind of BABIP dark magic that typically victimizes the Twins. Then pinch runner Jason Repko elicits a gasp as he overruns second base, and A-Rod alertly throws over to get the out, but Repko scrambles back just in time. In the past, that would have been death, but the Twins get away with a soft grounder and a base-running brain fart, and now J.J. Hardy comes to the plate again as the winning run. He hits what looks like a dagger double play grounder, but Valencia's speed makes the out at first the only safe option. One more shot at flipping the script. Runners at 2nd and 3rd, 2 out, and Denard Span coming to bat. Oh, right. This guy. Target Field rises to their feet. If this streak is going to die, this would be the poetic way to do it, with Goliath on the mound, pitching for the evil empire, while our heroes play in their brand new stadium, considered one of the best in all of sports. Let this be the moment when the burdens of the past are loosed from our shoulders and a new era begins with a bright, clear demarcation. Everything from this point forward can be free. A fresh start. 1-0. 2-0. 3-0.
3 balls and no strikes. They have
4-0. Oh no.
for a strike, 3-1.
With the zone seemingly expanded now, apparently, Span has to protect inside and fouls off ball 5. Span grounds out on the next pitch, and the threat is squandered. The Twins would get one more chance in the 9th. Down to their last out, Delman Young strikes a line drive to short right field, and Greg Golson makes a really good shoestring catch to close things out. Except...
No, they say it's a base hit. They said he trapped it. And Young has reached Joe Girardi, wants to talk about it.
an absolute gift. Golson 100% makes the catch, but the umps call it a trap for some reason, and it will still be 4 years before this would be a reviewable play. The Twins get another shot. Okay, now this should be how the streak should end. The Twins are on the receiving end of a massive spot of luck when it has worked against them every other time before. Jim Thome is at the plate. Kill the streak, Jim. Kill it now before it gets any ideas and changes its mind.
Broken bat behind third. Rodriguez makes the play.
It wasn't meant to be.
That is the third broken bat of the bottom of the ninth. And that is the first win of this series, and it goes to the New York Yankees.
Game 2 refuses to deviate from the formula. Twins score first with a bases-loaded sac fly, but leave the rest stranded. Regardless, this is now the 8th game that the Twins have played against the Yankees during the streak, and the Twins have scored first every single time. But of course that means the Yankees have also come back from a deficit every time, and they have the script memorized by heart too, tying the game in the 4th and taking a 1-run lead in the 5th. But again, the Twins don't roll over. When you're down 1, every batter is a potential tying run, and Orlando Hudson cashes in with a solo shot. 2-2 going into the 7th. But everything would begin to turn sour shortly after. After a leadoff walk to Posada, Twins pitcher Carl Pavano has Lance Berkman set up with a 1-2 count on 3 pitches away and delivers a perfect fastball on the inside edge to get the strikeout. But home plate umpire Hunter Wendelstedt doesn't give him the call. So naturally on the very next pitch, Berkman hits a freak double on a breaking ball well outside the zone, which plates Posada and breaks the tie. Gardenhire comes out for a mound visit, but it's more because he just wants an excuse to pay a visit to Wendelstedt on the way back. He does. Give him hell, Gardy.
Gardenhire's been tossed.
The crowd is fired up, but fate pays no mind. Derek Jeter would plate another run before the 7th is over, and tack on an insurance run in the 9th. Yankees win 5-2, and the Twins lose a game that they were at one point 66.5% favorites to win. The team leaves Target Field deflated, having to now return to Yankee Stadium knowing that they will have to win out in the Bronx to survive and get back home for a Game 5. The streak is now 11. And this is really the one time that they just look overwhelmed by the moment. The Twins need a spark, something, anything to get them hyped again. Jason Kugel stands in the clubhouse as reporters give him the floor. Come on, Jason, let's hear it. What do you got? Quote, Somehow, they've got our number. We keep saying, hopefully it will turn around next game, so hopefully it will turn around next game. Oh god, we're screwed, aren't we? Game 3 serves as a surrender. Over this entire streak, this will be the only game where the Twins never clear 50% odds. The Yankees score first in the second inning and absolutely never look back. The series is over. The season is over. And really, this era is over. Minnesota has waved the white flag. It's time to go home and recharge, rethink things. The winters in Minnesota can sometimes feel like they never end. This one lasts 6 years. It's 2017, and they're back! And it really is a whole new team. On the field, only Joe Mauer and pitcher Glenn Perkins remain from the 2010 squad. Ron Gardenhire was let go in 2014 after 4 brutal seasons of losing, and even he was like, yeah, that's probably the right call, I should probably go. He's replaced with former Twin and Hall of Famer Paul Molitor in his first ever coaching job. The front office has even seen a very rare turnover, with longtime GM Terry Ryan being relieved of duties in 2016 after helping run the team in one form or another since 1994. In his place the following year would be the new school duo of GM Thad Levine and President of Baseball Operations Derek Falvey, who was coming from a Cleveland organization that had just made it to the World Series. While the Twins have been rebuilding for a while, the feeling amongst observers is that the Twins still have some work to do to return to contending status. Fangraphs makes their 2017 staff predictions in the preseason, and not a single writer has the Twins in the postseason. But not everyone agrees with that assessment, including second baseman Brian Dozier. Quote, "I don't buy into the fact that we're rebuilding. I don't buy into the fact that a winning record and not getting to the postseason could be considered a successful year. Those are strong words for a guy starting on a team that's coming off a 103-loss season in 2016 and shares a division with the defending AL champs. Brian, we just got a new front office and they haven't even had a chance to install a manager of their own choosing in the clubhouse. Everybody knows that you're going to need a year or two to put it all together, and we've already been waiting for a bit, so hey, if you want to try and mix things up a bit, you go and do it." Well, what do you know? The pundits were right about one thing. Cleveland was still the powerhouse and would win 102 games. But Minnesota, plucky little Minnesota, had to go and mess with the timetables, thanks to their new rearranged core of Mauer, Dozier, pitchers Irvin Santana and Jose Barrios, and my favorite player not named Joe Mauer, center fielder Byron Buxton. The number 2 pick in the 2012 draft behind Carlos Correa, Buxton's otherworldly skill set has everyone ready to pencil him in as the future of the franchise. And while his speed and glove are absolutely there from day one, it takes him a bit to find his bat. In 2017, his 3rd year in the majors, he does, earning MVP votes at the end of the season while still performing must-see TV spectacles in the outfield just about every single game. If I cut together even a fraction of the amazing catches this guy has made, it would be longer than this video. Right now, as I record this in late 2023, Buxton's repeatedly shown flashes of being the best player in the game, when not relegated to designated hitter or being sidelined altogether due to injury. A phenomenon that Twins fans absolutely have zero experience with, I can assure you. In any case, Byron, if for some reason you're watching this, you've got at least one superfan rooting for you. Can't wait to see you back. Back in 2017, the Twins have made it to a wildcard spot, thanks to a new postseason format that's changed since they last made an appearance. Before, the 3 division winners and 1 wildcard team would play in best-of-5 division series matchups to determine who played in the ALCS. In the new format, 2 wildcard teams make it, but only just to face each other in a single game to determine who would get the usual spot against the number 1 seed. And if I am reading the rules correctly, we don't have to worry about any shenanigans, meaning that we'll get stuck playing the Yankees when we otherwise wouldn't, meaning that the Twins' opponent in 2017 is the New York Yankees. A 1-game playoff in the Bronx? Can we just volunteer to play a few more regular season games and fall back out of contention? But Brian Dozier says he doesn't want to hear any kind of negative Nancy's back in Minnesota. I guarantee you can ask 99% of people in this clubhouse and they'll have no idea what you're talking about. The Yankees used to beat the Twins a long time ago. So what? We don't care a bit about that. We just play. So what? I remember reading this quote when it was published the day of the game and thinking, one of two things has just happened. Either the Twins are about to win the World Series, or the baseball gods are about to remind a certain second baseman who really calls the shots around here. We wouldn't get our answer immediately because, even though the game had already started, Brian wasn't done making statements.
As young as he is, if that heart's beating a little bit quicker right now, fly ball to left field, Gardner's back, and it's gone! Dozier leads off the game with a home run for the Twins.
Oh my god, we are going to win the whole goddamn thing. A leadoff home run in front of a stunned Yankee Stadium. But the Twins somehow were not done.
And now this ball's hit hard into right field, and it is gone! Line drive home run for Rosario. And it is 3-0 Minnesota here in the first inning tonight. Here's a liner into left center. That's a base hit for the third baseman, Eduardo Escobar.
Throw his off speed, you know you're probably getting a heater.
He got one and he lined it into right field, a base hit. Escobar will make the turn and head to third. Judge struggles with it a little bit, and that allows Kepler to slide into second. And the Twins
3-0. First inning, 1 out, runners on second and third, and Joe Girardi pulls Luis Severino, who leaves the game with a career postseason ERA of 81.0. This is the first Twins postseason game that I got to fully experience in the age of social media. And let me just say, I have never seen so many messages typed in all caps with a dozen exclamation marks in all my life, and I say that as someone who played World of Warcraft for a full decade. If there is an emotion that I wish I could bottle and come back to when I needed it, it would be that rush that the top of the first inning was. It felt like fans of every other team were rooting for the Twins that night because they literally were. The game thread in the Twins subreddit was quickly becoming a block party where everyone was invited. This was the feel-good story of the moment, and everyone wanted in on it. Our pain was their pain. Our triumph was their triumph. I say that I wish I could revisit this emotion after the fact, but the truth is, I can't. And that's because it's impossible to think back on that first inning without remembering everything that would immediately follow.
And the pitch rocked to right field. Tie game.
So, to summarize, a team led by a dude who insisted that they have zero emotional investment in a losing streak that's littered with moments of taking an early lead against the Yankees before immediately surrendering that lead, just took that concept and threw a rocket booster on it. To help further drive this point home, Byron Buxton would just about keep the Twins in this game single-handedly. First, with a quintessential catch in the outfield.
Buxton back, catches it! Leaping up against the fence to Rob Frazier.
and then by plating the tying run purely with his speed preventing a double play. But the impact that he took hitting the center field wall was still lingering, and he would have to be pulled after the fourth, and the Twins' chances would leave with him. The Yankees would build a 4-run lead, which is how this game would end. Before we go, I do want to mention one last thing, and that is a solitary plate appearance in the top of the 9th. Down 4, 2 outs, nobody on base, and Joe Mauer would come up for what would ultimately be his final postseason plate appearance. Aroldis Chapman on the mound, taking over where Mariano Rivera had left off as baseball player whose personal character would cause me to hate him even if he wasn't a Yankee, who also happens to be a near-invincible closer. But Joe Mauer, as always, is cool. He takes a pitch, 2 pitches, 3 pitches, 4 pitches, calmly fouls off a 101-mile fastball on the corner, and then hits a trademark ground ball single to extend the game just that little bit more. Joe Mauer deserved better than what the postseason fates delivered him, but I'm sure that he would tell you that things turned out for him okay. When he gets elected to the Hall of Fame, it'll be the first time I make the pilgrimage to Cooperstown. So, well played, Mauer. As much as I want to stop and write 15 pages about the 2018 season and how it typifies the mantra of the Minnesota Twins and the concept of maximum gut punch,
There are no words.
it is mid-September as I record this, and I need to finish this video before the postseason starts and either requires a complete rewrite or makes this whole exercise moot. And so, welcome to the Bomba Squad era. In the words of Stefan, this season had everything. New manager Rocco Baldelli, free agent acquisition Nelson Cruz, the debut of Luis Suarez, team mascot number 64 on his jersey but number 1 in our hearts, Willians Astudillo, the best season of Jake Odorizzi's career, the jocularity of Sergio Romo. And there was one other thing. What was it? It's on the tip of my brain. Oh yeah, the most home runs in Major League history.
Blast left center field. A drive to right field. Driven deep to right center field. A drive to right field. A drive to right center field. Unbelievable. For the 3, here's a drive right center field. High and deep to right center. Deep down. High. Driven to center. Deep to Polanco.
5 players cleared 30 home runs. Everyone in the starting lineup cleared 20, except for Byron Buxton, who still had a 3-war season. And all of this would culminate for a 101-win season, an AL Central crown.
Garver with a blast to deep left field, and the Minnesota Twins are the most prolific home run hitting team in baseball history.
Would you like to guess what happened next? Game 1 would continue a rather familiar refrain. Twins score first, in the first, this time with a Jorge Polanco home run. The Yankees respond by scoring on an RBI dribbler, but the run gets taken back when the Twins successfully challenge the safe call at first. In the second, Marwin Gonzalez doubles, and then CJ Cron hits a pop fly about 300 feet in the air, and somehow DJ LeMahieu botches the routine catch. Wait, a successful replay review? Boneheaded defense by the opponent? Wait, is this a Twins game? The error would be followed by an inning-ending double play. Yep, this is a Twins game. The Twins extend their lead to 2 in the third, when the following ingredients come together. Nelson Cruz, a 2019 juiced baseball, and Yankee Stadium's ultra-generous right field wall. Mix together and bake at 350 for 25 minutes, and you got yourself a home run that brings your win expectancy to 67.1%, and hopefully get some 5-star reviews on all recipes. Yankees come up in the bottom of the third and get to work after Luis Arraez can't come up with a catch in shallow right, allowing DJ LeMahieu to get on base. Judge singles, Gardner flies out, and LeMahieu advances to third, and then scores when Edwin Encarnacion rockets a liner to left and then manages to turn it into a double when nobody covers the bag. Stanton walks to load the bases, but Gleyber Torres mercifully grounds into a double play, which CJ Cron fails to complete. So, instead of getting away with a 1-run lead, the Yankees score 2 more on the error and leave them down by 1 instead. The Twins would tie the game in the 5th after more Yankees defensive lapses. First, when Stanton dives for a ball that he shouldn't have, allowing Arraez to record a double, and then when Stanton can't field a base hit by Polanco. Would Arraez have scored anyway from second? Yes. Do I care? No. No, I do not. I will take each and every small moral victory I can claw out of the hundreds of hours of research I've had to do for this project. But this would also be about the time that the game starts to slip away. Yankees score 2 in the bottom half of the 5th. Twins reply with one of their own on a trademark 2019 pop fly to right field should be playable. Oh, nope, wait, home run by Miguel Sano. Before the Yankees put the game away with 5 unanswered runs, Yankees win 10-4. Game 2 would forever be known as the Randy Dobnak game, because the Twins' already thin pitching staff had been so depleted that they were forced to hand the ball to Dobnak, a guy who had started the season in single-A ball and was best known for being an Uber driver while also playing baseball. One of those tidbits that the media runs with where it shines a really harsh light on the low income of minor league players but instead gets received as, lol, what a quirky human interest story. I'm sure the Yankees fans won't heckle him mercilessly about trying to support his family while he's on the mound. I hate Yankees fans. Dobnak would only go 2 innings before loading the bases to start the 3rd and getting pulled. All 3 runs would score. Twins lose 8-2. Game 3 back in Minnesota was also never really competitive, but it does offer a fun quirk, where the Twins were 63% favorites to win at one point while losing because they loaded the bases with no outs in the 2nd inning while down 1. But then went pop fly, strike out to leave everyone stranded. Like I said, fun! The 2019 Twins did this with that, and somehow that translated to this. Well, this sucks. Well, hey, at least there's little chance 2020 could be much worse. Yeah, but seriously, folks, it's time for empty stadium baseball. A 60-game season where over half the league would make the playoffs, and also serve as a very handy chart for denoting the time period where I hated the whole exercise and felt like it was a complete crapshoot, and the time where I had come around and was glad that we ensured that the national pastime persevered in the face of adversity. With a record of 36-24, the Twins won the AL Central by a single game over Cleveland and the White Sox, and all 3 teams would make the postseason as the 2, 4, and 7 seed. Yeah, it was that kind of year. Oh, wait. Shit, the Yankees made the postseason, and they're almost certainly going to be playing an AL Central opponent. Shit, I cannot look, please, God. Yes! Oh my God, something nice happened to us, and something bad also happened to Cleveland. What a wonderful day. We don't have to play the baseball team everyone hates the most. The Twins starting pitcher for Game 1 is Kenta Maeda, who was grabbed in a trade with the Dodgers, who was using Maeda mostly out of the bullpen. But the Twins believed he had the stuff to be an ace. And the nation of Japan certainly agreed after having watched him earn just about every accolade there was. Kenta knew, as he's worn the number 18 for the Dodgers, which in Japan is an honor typically bestowed to the ace of a team's pitching staff. And Twins catcher Mitch Garver knew, as he called up Maeda before the trade was public to offer him his number 18 jersey personally. Maeda is thrilled. He's so happy to be a part of this team. I love this guy. Being a runner-up in the Cy Young voting this year certainly doesn't hurt either. Maeda is up against Zach Greinke, his former teammate on the Dodgers. But before that, Greinke spent the start of his career making Twins fans miserable while pitching for the Royals. And while that was a decade ago, and he isn't doing as well now, he's still a great pitcher. Greinke is a hilarious dude. I don't have time to go into it, just please, after you watch this, go Google Zach Greinke Weird. It will make for a lovely afternoon. Attending a playoff game at Target Field can also make for a lovely afternoon, but thanks to the pandemic, the only spectators in attendance are cardboard cutouts. These have been present all throughout the league in order to make the stadium not look completely cavernous, but different teams have gone for different tactics. Some used local celebrities or notable faces that people would otherwise expect to see in the stands. Lots of teams see a novel way to make some money, allowing fans to spend a few bucks and send in a photo to get themselves added to the stands. And the Twins get in on that as well, but when it comes to the seats behind home plate, given the context, I think that this was just about the cruelest option available.
Greetings, Twins player. We are the ghosts of the past. Right now, you're mired in what is already tied for the longest postseason losing streak in American sports, and you're not even done yet. But hey, just in case you need an unblinking reminder of what has transpired to bring us to this point, we will be here, watching. We are the ghosts of the past. And current radio broadcaster Corey Provis. We also have that kid from Little Big League, but even he lost a game 163. We are the ghosts of the past.
Game 1 is a tense affair throughout. The Twins find a way to load the bases and make Greinke throw 30 pitches in the first inning alone, and still fail to score. Maeda does his job though, pitching 5 scoreless innings, only giving up 2 hits, while Minnesota gets on the board when Max Kepler is walked and Nelson Cruz delivers a double to right field. Josh Reddick is slow to field it, Kepler never slows down, and makes a great slide at home plate to beat out a bullet of a relay from Carlos Correa. Man, I would love to see a lot more of those throws at Target Field someday. Anyways, the Twins hold their 1-run lead into the top of the 7th, where with 2 outs, the Astros just keep scrapping with a bloop single, a hard hit to third that Marwin Gonzalez has trouble with against his former team, and another bloop that plates a run. However, the damage is limited when Byron Buxton spots Maldonado trying to sneak in an extra base, and makes the easy throw to third to end the inning with the game tied 1-1, which is where the score would remain until the 9th. Against slider specialist Sergio Romo, the Astros would again feast on soft bloop singles, starting the inning with runners at first and second and nobody out. Suddenly in a jam, Romo induces a foul pop-up out of Josh Reddick and a harmless fly ball to left from Maldonado. 2 outs, and the runners have not had a chance to advance. George Springer goes down 1-2 against Romo, who turns to his signature pitch,
Springer,
a slider that starts inside and acts like an absolute wiffle ball, inducing swing and miss strikeouts. On this occasion, Romo has executed it perfectly, and the late break that he has created here is exactly what he's looking for. The ball gets almost a full foot out of the zone, and Springer has taken the bait. And yet, Springer has somehow made contact. But given how out of shape his form had to go in order to reach it, it's only a one-hopper to Jorge Polanco, who's caught slightly by surprise by the bounce, but he still comes up with the ball. Just toss the ball to any base, and let's get our shot at this walk-off. Take us home, Jorge.
George, and that's at the shortstop. The force out dropped, and the Twins stay.
I have watched this replay so many times, and I still cannot really figure out what happened here. The error is officially charged to Polanco, but really the whole thing is just awkward. Polanco has more than enough time to gather himself and make the throw, and he doesn't look that rushed. Meanwhile, Luis Arraez's momentum is taking him past second base, and Polanco throws just behind him enough to make it a difficult catch. Arraez loses his footing, ball falls to the ground, and the inning doesn't end. Romo would follow with a bases-loaded walk to give the Astros a lead before being pulled, and then Michael Brantley would tack on 2 more with a single to center. The Twins were this close. One simple force out from having a chance at heroics, but now instead, the bottom of the 9th becomes desperation time against Framber Valdez. I am at least relieved to say they did not give up. With 1 out, the Twins got the tying run to the plate after consecutive singles. But Williams Astudillo grounds into a double play, and the streak is now 17. Because of the pandemic, post-game interviews are limited to Zoom, and the press only get to talk to a few players. Maeda laments that if he had pitched better, maybe he could have gone longer. Romo takes responsibility for the 9th and the loss, which is only his 2nd ever in 30 postseason appearances. Manager Rocco Baldelli refuses to bow to the pressure. We have to show up tomorrow ready to play, get a little music in the clubhouse, and just try and forget what happened. We have some work to do, and it starts tomorrow. I still really have no idea how to feel about Game 2. Where a lot of fans, and some really acidic local columnists, look at the streak and have a lot of blame to assign to the home team, I've generally been more positive. However, this game just felt dour. I'm sure the empty stadium didn't help. The frustrations of Game 1 were still simmering. The Twins loaded the bases in the first inning, again, and stranded them all, without ever recording a hit. They would fall behind early, but tie it up in the 5th. However, that was also a muted celebration, as Luis Arraez followed behind with an aggressive 2-out send that never really had a chance thanks to another great relay throw by Carlos Correa. Man, that guy is a really good player. You know, I feel bad for booing him, but just him. In the 6th, the weather turns gray. The rain began to fall, and Eddie Rosario becomes the first player in this entire streak to truly just break. Eddie, my man, you are leading off the 6th in a tied postseason elimination game. Yeah, it was a bad call. We know, we saw it, but the Twins, they only had 4 hits yesterday. We have only had 3 so far today. We need your bat in this lineup. Come on, man, be like Joe Mauer. Please just be cool.
3-2 into the mid of Maldonado, and Rosario has a word, and he gets thrown out. Manny Gonzalez tossed him.
There's no spinning this as an opportunity to light a fire under the team. There's no crowd to pump up. The Astros are easily the most favorable postseason matchup that they have had in 2 decades, and they're not getting it done. Joe Boyd is back in front of his television, sitting, crestfallen. The wager is lost. The devil has come to collect. And there's no wiggling out of this one with a song and dance number after intermission. He wasn't wrong about the favorable odds that the Twins held. He just omitted some extremely important supplementary information. And so we must return to the question that sent us on this journey. What were the odds that Joe would lose that bet? The odds that Minnesota would always be the victim of fate. Questionable calls, tired bullpens, contrived rules, coin flips, bad sequencing, unfavorable schedules, a hell of a lot of BABIP, hot bats suddenly dying, mental lapses that seem to always get punished. What does it add up to when the universe puts all of its energy into telling someone to stay down after getting punched in the face, and that someone repeatedly refuses? It looks like this. $69 billion, $50 million, 227,309 to 1. Right now, this chart is in logarithmic scale, meaning every line is exponential. It's 10 times larger than the line below it, so you just keep adding zeros as you go up. Here is that same chart with a normal linear scale. There are no words. Okay, right now, some viewers are scoffing at the absurdity of this exercise. You could argue that I have taken a lot of data and tortured it using my own ridiculous methodology, which guarantees that at the end I will end up with a very big number that doesn't mean anything. And yes, that is exactly what I have done. I have nowhere to hide, I confess my crimes, I have very little supporting evidence to suggest that you should draw conclusions from this other than my sincerity and video production skills. Except, this isn't the only long streak in baseball that we've ever seen. There are other times where a team has gone on a run, some good, some bad. And what if we were to use this same process on those? How would they compare? Good news, I already did it. In 2017, the team now known as the Cleveland Guardians set the record for the longest winning streak in American League history. A local window company offered a promotion where anyone who bought from them in July would get everything for free if Cleveland won 15 games in a row after August 1st. They did, and then added 7 more on top for a 22-game win streak. With a full 4 more games to work with than the Twins, you would think that the win expectancy odds of this streak would be massive, right? Well, Cleveland was never a huge underdog in any of these games until the very last, maxing out at 89% to lose to Kansas City in the bottom of the 9th before winning in extra innings. The win expectancy odds of this streak? 293 million to 1. In August of 2021, the Baltimore Orioles were deep into a woeful 110-loss season, but 19 of those came in consecutive games before finally coming out on top when they discovered the healing oasis that is the Angels' bullpen. They had a couple promising games, including one where they were up 3 in the 7th inning against the Rays before losing. Most of these contests, though, were laughers, including 4 where they never cleared 50%. Despite the streak being a game longer, the odds of this streak land at a measly 1.6 billion to 1. That same year, the Cardinals went on a 17-game win streak, 2.6 billion to 1. What about the 23-loss losing streak by the 1961 Phillies, which holds the record for the longest losing streak in the modern era? 6.8 billion to 1. The 21-game losing streak by the Orioles in 1988, which made the cover of Sports Illustrated while it was still in progress? 10 billion to 1. Okay, let's bring out the big guns. The Moneyball A's. Surely, Oakland's 20-game win streak, exciting enough to be the climax of a Best Picture nominee, that has to be the champion, right? Hollywood would never take that much creative license with a true story from only 20 years ago, would they? Well, they did conveniently leave out that Miguel Tejada existed, played on the A's, and was the 2002 AL MVP. And while yes, there were some tense moments and big comebacks, there weren't nearly as many as you might expect. Scott Hatteberg's heroic home run at the end of the 20th game against the Royals culminated a contest where they were favored from the very first play until the walk-off celebration. Odds of this streak? 2.8 billion to 1. Does this help illustrate why this streak feels the way it does? The fact that it exists entirely in the postseason? How many times the Twins were so close to relief? The continuing realization that instead of getting to experience this for just a brief window, we've been stuck in it for almost 2 decades? That brings us to today. It's 2023, and in the final month of the season, as I record this, the Twins are in first place in the AL Central and look slated to face someone other than the Yankees. In fact, if you were the kind of person to read into these things, there's a lot this year to be encouraged by, a sign that things are turning. For the first time in decades, the Twins split a series at Yankee Stadium. They won the season series against the Yankees. And for the first time in even longer, the Twins are on pace to finish with a higher win total than the Yankees. But until the Twins win a postseason game, a lot of that is very small consolation. In October, barring some catastrophic collapse, the streak is either going to extend or end. I would argue that at this point, Twins fans are broken. This isn't a fan base anymore, it is a support group. There is certainly pain that can be found in being a fan of a perennially losing team. But the package deal that comes with rooting for a basement dweller is low expectations. The Twins have certainly had their bad stretches, but like a bad penny, they keep turning up. They refuse to stop asking the question, do you believe that this is the year? And so the chasm of despair that comes with every loss just gets deeper. It begins to stain the joy derived from any happy moment in the regular season. A stadium trying to cheer for their team while dreading the final act, where every positive step and signature win will eventually set them up for more heartbreak. Some fans grow jaded. Walk-off win? Well, now if they could only do that in the playoffs. 100 plus wins in 2019? Doesn't matter if they don't get it done in October. Getting to root for a Hall of Fame caliber player for his entire career? Well, he's never got it done in the postseason, so actually he's crap. Like Lucy forever pulling the football from Charlie Brown, there's only one way this can end, right? And now for those voices, it's no longer about emotional investment, but dismissing the optimists around them and calling them fools in the moment, following up with smug, self-righteous rants over the phones on sports radio the next day, incredulous that anyone could expect a result other than failure. But if that is the lens through which you choose to watch this team, why are you still here? What is there to be gained? How can you not look at the history of this franchise, what it has endured, the weight of this streak that the players still carry on their shoulders, and realize that their perseverance, their stubborn refusal to surrender to history, that even when they did win, they did so as underdogs, overperforming their expectations, and that no matter how many times they've been told to walk into the fire that is playing the Yankees, they may have lost, but they didn't roll over, and in fact almost always scored first. How is that not still praiseworthy? How do you not see how great the triumph will be when we get to speak about this streak in the past tense? How can you not be romantic about baseball? And I guess that's the question that I'm asking myself as I make this video, because gosh darn it, I have hope. I need to. I've witnessed too many victories, too many moments of ecstasy, of bliss, so many near misses, too much great baseball to believe that this numbers, this 69 billion to 1, means anything more than this. When the Twins do win, and they will eventually win, not just a single game, but another World Series, the catharsis felt in Minnesota will forever alter the atmosphere. Like the Red Sox in 2004, the Cubs in 2016, the Mariners ending their postseason drought in 2022. It's not simply going to be a caps lock post on social media, cracking open a beer and turning off the TV. There's going to be tears, relief, hugs, celebration, and words whispered while looking upwards to fans and loved ones who aren't with us to join in the revelry, hoping that they're with us in spirit and smiling down. If victories are made sweeter by the struggles that were overcome on the way, then there can be no doubt that the Twins coming out on top in the postseason will be the most decadent prize of all. Have a good night.
Well, hello there. If you are watching this, that means you've gotten all the way through, and I will take that as a tremendous compliment. But this has been a very exciting project that really started like right when the 2020 playoffs ended, and has just been percolating since then. And then the Twins got back into contention, and I suddenly realized I had to make this video very quickly. This is normally the period where you would be told to like and subscribe, and yes, I will be telling you to like and subscribe. Normally it'd be like, and subscribe to my Patreon. Don't have a Patreon. This was kind of a one-off project. I don't know if I'm going to be making more videos. I really enjoyed making this one and would like to find the time to make some more, but would like to figure out what those ideas would be, and would like to try and maybe find my own voice a little bit more with them. Yeah, no, we're getting to you. You're coming up, don't worry. Since I don't have a Patreon, I am going to be throwing you a PayPal link, and I'm going to be playing the pet card. This is Deeps. Look at the ears. The ears are so big. Deeps is a Papillon, and he is a lifelong Twins fan. His favorite Twins player is Kenny Vargas. We haven't had the heart to tell him that he's not on the team anymore. But Deeps had spinal surgery a couple weeks ago, and it was really freaking expensive. So there's a PayPal link at the bottom. If you are a Twins fan and you are suddenly feeling very validated about your emotions, if you're a fan of another team and you are feeling very empathetic about what you just watched, or if you're a Yankees fan and feeling extremely guilty and want to pay a little bit of penance, the link is down there. Throw a few dollars this way. You will make this dog very, very, very happy, and me as well. Also, if you thought that this video looked pretty, well, thank you. Have a company support class. We do broadcast graphics. We do broadcast graphics for sports and charity events and video game companies and whatnot. Some of the companies right here that we've worked with in the past. I would really love to put my knowledge of baseball to work with score bugs and whatnot. So if you're a minor league team, if you're a college team, if you are indie league, if you are banana ball team, give us a shout, and we would love to help. Be able to let everyone know what your TOPS plus is at the push of a button. We can do that. We have the technology. Isn't that right? Yes. Is this enough shameless plugging? I don't know when the next time I'm going to make a video. I need to get it all out of the way right now. Go Twins!